Listen. Practice. Speak. Practice makes you perfect.
How to give truly killer business presentations.
What we're working with here is fascinating. It's like we're flies on the wall during the meticulous planning stages between two people who are obsessed with presentation mastery.
Yeah, and our goal is to really distill their insights, the stuff that can immediately level up your own game, whether you're a seasoned pro or just getting started.
You can tell right away these folks aren't just thinking about the big picture. They're dissecting every single detail, from the first word out of your mouth to that final slide. It really hits home that a great presentation isn't just one brilliant idea. It's about all the little things executed perfectly.
Okay, so get this. We're going to be uncovering a ton of stuff they covered. Crafting those openings that pull people in, designing slides that clarify, not clutter, how to use your voice and body language to really own the room.
And don't forget about those Q&A sessions. Sometimes those can feel a bit scary. They talked about how to handle those with complete confidence, how to make sure your content flows naturally, like a good conversation.
Oh, and using visuals strategically, not just for the sake of it. And the big one, how to keep your audience engaged. Because, let's be honest, nobody wants to watch someone drone on.
And there's more, much more. We're talking about the secrets to practicing effectively, how to gracefully address objections, how to absolutely nail that conclusion, turning feedback into your secret weapon, and making complex data, well, not so complex.
Oh, and can't forget about managing those pre-presentation jitters, every presenter's worst nightmare. And finally, we'll delve into the subtle but persuasive art of using language that gets people on board with your ideas. We're really covering it all.
If you think about it, each of these pieces is really a skill in itself, but when you put them all together, it's like this powerful recipe for communication. It's about connecting with your audience on a deeper level, persuading them with clarity, and ultimately driving them to action.
So let's jump right in. First impressions matter, right? These conversations really hammered home the importance of captivating your listeners from the very first moment. They had some fascinating ideas on how to do that, and I have to say, some of them were really eye-opening.
Absolutely. One thing they were really big on was starting strong, like right out of the gate. Hit them with something powerful, a striking statistic, maybe an anecdote, something that resonates with their professional lives.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's all about relevance, isn't it?
Yeah.
Not just shock value, but something that makes them think, wow, this actually applies to me.
Right. Make them sit up and take notice. They also talked about posing a thought-provoking question right at the beginning, something that sparks curiosity and gets the audience thinking from the very first second.
And here's a question for you, listening right now. How often do you actively engage your audience like that, with a question designed to make them think, rather than just launching right into your information?
It's a simple shift, but it can be so powerful. Another thing they really emphasized was stating your objective clearly right up front.
So everyone knows what they're in for, why they should care. I like that.
It just makes everything flow so much smoother. If your audience doesn't know why they're there, you're already starting at a disadvantage, right?
Now, this is where it gets really interesting. They spent some time talking about the power of personal stories. Weaving in a brief anecdote can really inject authenticity into your presentation and build rapport with the audience.
People connect with stories. It makes you relatable, more human. And that's what makes your message stick.
It's true. Think about the presentations you remember, the ones that really stuck with you. I bet they had a personal touch, a story that resonated.
Definitely. It's more memorable than just abstract concepts or dry data. They also talked about visuals, but not just any visuals. They were big on using a single powerful image right at the start to spark conversation and set the tone.
Oh yeah, like a visual hook.
Exactly. It doesn't have to be complex, just something that triggers an emotional response, makes them feel something.
Images are powerful, and I think we often underestimate how much they can impact a presentation. Okay, so you've got your killer opening, you've got your visuals, but you can't just wing it from there, right?
Not at all. They were very clear about the importance of rehearsing that opening, like multiple times, to make sure you sound confident and natural.
But it's also about being adaptable, right? What if the audience reacts in a way you didn't expect?
Right, you don't want to be so stuck to your script that you can't read the room and adjust. It's about finding that balance between preparation and flexibility.
Yeah, and don't forget to keep that initial welcome concise. Nobody wants to sit through a long, rambling introduction before you actually get to the good stuff.
Absolutely. Respect your audience's time, make it clear that you value their attention and that you're ready to dive into the meat of the presentation. No time for fluff.
Okay, here's another point they brought up that I thought was really smart. They suggested highlighting the main benefit of your presentation right in the introduction itself.
Ugh, the good old what's in it for me. Everyone wants to know why this matters to them, right? If you can answer that question right away, you've already won half the battle.
Absolutely. And to make it even more engaging, they even tossed around the idea of using a quick interactive poll at the very beginning.
Oh, that's a fun one. A little something to wake up the room, get people participating from the get-go.
But they cautioned that it should be brief, not derail the whole presentation.
Exactly, just a quick jolt of energy. So yeah, they really put a lot of emphasis on those first few moments, making sure that first impression is a lasting one.
Absolutely crucial. All right, let's move on to slides, the visual backbone of any good presentation.
Slides. So important, but they can also be a real pitfall if they're not done right.
That's exactly what they said. They really stress the need to strip those slides down to the bare essentials, highlighting only the absolute key points. No clutter, no distractions.
The slides shouldn't be the star of the show, right? They're there to support you, to visually enhance what you're saying, not distract from it.
Exactly. And that means being ruthless with those bullet points.
Yeah.
Limit them to just a few per slide. Keep it focused.
Otherwise, it's just too much information, and people's eyes glaze over.
They also talked about using visuals strategically, like graphs and charts to illustrate complex data.
Oh yeah, visuals can be incredibly powerful. They make data more tangible, easier to grasp, but...
There's always a but, isn't there?
Right. You have to make sure those visuals are crystal clear and that they're supporting your point, not overshadowing it.
Yeah, you don't want your audience staring at a confusing graph while you're trying to make a crucial point. They were also big on aesthetics, things like color palettes. Should you be consistent throughout the presentation or use variations to highlight different sections?
Well, they debated that one for a while. Ultimately, they felt that consistency usually makes the presentation look more professional. A unified look is generally more appealing.
Makes sense. And what about captions for images?
They really liked those. Short, descriptive captions, just to make sure the audience immediately understands the relevance of the image and how it connects to your point.
No room for ambiguity, huh?
Not if you can help it. Another recurring theme with their slide design was minimalism, keeping the text to an absolute minimum.
Ah, the less is more approach. It makes sense. The more text you have on the slide, the more your audience is reading instead of listening to you.
Exactly. They also spent time talking about fonts, something we often overlook, but they made a good point. If your font is hard to read, people are going to struggle to follow along.
What do they recommend?
They favored clean, sans serif fonts. They felt those were the most modern and readable.
Yeah, I can see that. Anything to make it easier for the audience.
Yeah.
What about slide transitions? Do they get into that?
Oh yeah, transitions are important. They can really help create a smooth flow. They suggested using subtle, consistent transitions. No crazy effects or anything that would distract from the content.
That's good advice. Subtlety is key. Now, this one's interesting. They debated back and forth about video clips, whether they're a help or a hindrance.
Yeah, they can be tricky. On the one hand, a well-placed video can be really engaging, but...
We can also derail the entire presentation if it's not done right.
Right. Their advice was to use them sparingly, only when absolutely necessary, and to make sure they're short, to the point, and directly relevant to your message.
No long, drawn-out videos that take over the whole presentation.
Got it. One last point on slide design. They experimented with using contrasting color backgrounds to highlight different sections.
Ah, that can be a really effective way to visually break up the presentation. But again, subtlety is key. You don't want to blind your audience with neon colors.
Right, it's got to be tasteful. So the bottom line with slide design, keep it clean, keep it concise, and make sure your visuals enhance, not distract from your message.
Exactly. Your slides should always serve your story, never the other way around. All right, let's move on to something that can make or break a presentation. Your delivery. We're talking voice, body language, the whole package.
The way you present yourself is just as important as the content itself, maybe even more so.
I agree. They were really big on vocal projection, making sure you can command attention in the room. But they also said it's about finding that balance between volume and clarity. You don't want to be shouting at your audience.
Right, and it's about avoiding an aggressive tone. It's about being powerful but approachable.
They also talked about pacing, the speed at which you deliver your presentation. Practice, 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 right? Get a good feel for the rhythm and flow of your speech.
Absolutely. It's all about control. Not too fast, not too slow, just right. And something we all struggle with, filler words. The ums, ahs, those little things that creep into our speech.
Oh, tell me about it. I'm the queen of,
Well, they had a great tip for that. Replace those filler words with pauses. Just a brief moment to gather your thoughts. It not only makes you sound more composed, but it also gives your audience a chance to absorb what you've just said.
That's good advice. I'm going to try that. They also talked about varying your tone of voice. Not just speaking in a monotone, but emphasizing key points, using inflection to make your presentation more dynamic.
It's like adding punctuation to your speech, right?
Yeah.
It helps to highlight what's important and keeps things interesting for the listener.
I like that analogy. And then there were facial expressions. They were big on using expressions to convey your enthusiasm, to humanize your presentation.
A smile can go a long way, right? It shows your audience that you're passionate about what you're talking about, and it makes you more relatable.
Yeah, nobody wants to watch someone who looks bored or disinterested in their own material. And what about hand gestures?
They talked about those too. They suggested using deliberate gestures to reinforce your points, but not going overboard.
So no flailing your arms around like a windmill.
Exactly. Keep it natural and purposeful. And they had a great tip for self-awareness, recording your practice sessions so you can see how you come across to others.
Oh, that's a good one. I hate watching myself on video, but it's so helpful for identifying those little quirks and habits we're often unaware of.
Absolutely. And pay attention to your posture and eye contact. Maintaining a confident stance throughout the presentation can make a huge difference in how you're perceived.
For sure. Another thing they emphasized was speaking with genuine passion. If you don't seem invested in what you're saying, why should your audience be?
Passion is contagious, right? When you're genuinely excited about your topic, it shows, and it makes your presentation that much more compelling.
And what about nerves? Everybody gets nervous, right?
Yeah, it's completely normal. They recommended using simple techniques like deep breathing exercises to calm those pre-presentation jitters.
Good old deep breathing works wonders. They also suggested rehearsing your transitions between sections, making sure that flow from one topic to the next is smooth and seamless.
Transitions are like the glue that holds your presentation together. You want them to be natural and effortless.
And don't forget about those strategic pauses. Giving your audience a moment to digest important information. It's like letting the message sink in before you move on.
Absolutely. And to keep things interesting, they talked about incorporating a bit of humor, where appropriate, but they stressed that it should be subtle, tasteful, and definitely culturally sensitive.
You don't want to offend anyone or make your presentation seem unprofessional.
Right. Humor is a delicate balance. And finally, they were adamant about having a solid vocal warm-up routine.
Like singers do before a performance.
Exactly. It helps you loosen up your vocal cords and get those articulators working.
So when it comes to delivery, it's about being clear, engaging, and being your authentic self, right?
Absolutely. Let your passion shine through, but make sure you're also in control.
Okay, let's tackle the Q&A session, the part that can be a bit nerve-wracking, especially if you're not prepared.
They had some great advice for this, too. The key is to anticipate those tough questions and have your answers ready.
Yeah, do your homework, know your stuff inside and out. And what about when you get a question that's a bit, well, confrontational? How do you stay calm and collected?
They recommended taking a brief pause before you answer. Don't rush into it. Gather your thoughts and then address the core issue directly without getting defensive.
Makes sense. It's about staying in control, not letting your emotions get the better of you. They also suggested having backup material, like data or additional slides, just in case you need to dive deeper into a particular point.
Being overprepared is never a bad thing, right? It shows that you're thorough and that you've really thought things through. And they made a good point about being transparent. If there's a valid criticism, acknowledge it. It shows you're open to different perspectives.
Yeah, trying to defend your position at all costs. It just makes you look stubborn and close-minded. And if you're struggling to understand a question, don't be afraid to rephrase it back to the person who asked it. It's about making sure you're on the same page.
Clarifying is always a good thing. It shows that you're listening and that you want to make sure you're addressing their concern accurately.
And remember, even if you're feeling flustered on the inside, maintain that confident body language, keep that eye contact steady, and stand tall. It makes a huge difference.
Your nonverbal cues speak volumes, sometimes even louder than your words.
So true. Now, what about when a question veers off topic? How do you bring it back to the main point without seeming rude?
They had a solution for that too, redirecting the question. Acknowledge their interest, but gently steer the conversation back to your core message.
I like that. It's about being respectful, but also staying focused on the topic at hand. And when you're faced with an opposing viewpoint, always look for that common ground.
Finding that shared understanding can really help to de-escalate things and make the conversation more productive.
And always thank the person who asked the question. Even if you don't agree with their point, it just creates a more positive and respectful environment.
Absolutely. And to make sure you're really on your game during the Q&A, practice, practice, practice.
You mean rehearse potential questions and answers.
Exactly. And think about those bridging techniques, how you can subtly steer the conversation back to your main points if things start to go astray.
And have your notes handy, just in case you need to reference a key data point or a specific piece of information. It can be a real confidence booster.
Notes are your friend, especially when you're under pressure. And finally, just be patient and listen attentively. Make sure everyone feels heard and that their questions are being taken seriously.
That's so important. You don't want to make anyone feel rushed or dismissed. So when it comes to the Q&A, preparation is key. Stay calm and be respectful.
Exactly. It's an opportunity to connect with your audience on a deeper level, not a test you need to pass.
Right. Okay. Let's move on to content structure. This is the foundation of any good presentation.
The bones, the skeleton, the framework upon which everything else is built.
They really emphasize the importance of a logical structure, arranging your main points in a way that creates a clear and compelling narrative.
Think of it like a story, right? It needs a beginning, a middle, and an end. And each part needs to flow smoothly into the next.
I like that. And to prevent things from getting too jumbled, they suggested grouping related points together under overarching themes.
Right. It just helps to create order and makes it easier for your audience to follow along. They were also big on starting with a high-level overview, giving the audience a roadmap of what to expect.
Like an executive summary, right?
Exactly. Sets the stage, gives them the big picture before you dive into the details. And in terms of presenting your arguments, they felt it was best to lead with your strongest point.
Make a big impact right away. I like it.
Exactly. Capture their attention with your most compelling argument, and then back it up with supporting data.
Don't overwhelm them with too much detail, right? Stick to the most relevant points.
Precisely. No one wants to be bombarded with information. And to make sure everyone is on the same page, they suggested including brief recaps after each major section,
A little reinforcement never hurts.
especially with complex information. And they stressed the need for smooth transitions between those sections,
You know, those little verbal cues that help you move seamlessly from one topic to the next.
like signposts along the way, guiding your audience through the presentation. And to really hammer home those points, they suggested using real-life examples or case studies.
Makes those abstract concepts more concrete and relatable.
Definitely. And one of their core principles, keep it simple. Each slide should have just one primary takeaway.
Focus, focus, focus.
Right, don't try to cram too much into one slide. It just leads to confusion. And the goal is to guide your audience toward a strong conclusion that ties everything together.
And they suggested using explicit verbal cues to signal those transitions, like key point 1 or moving on to our next topic.
It just helps to keep everyone oriented, make the flow of the presentation really clear.
And for that conversational feel, they suggested using transitional phrases like building on this idea or moving forward, let's consider.
Little things that make a big difference. And before you even think about stepping on that stage, review your outline, make sure there's no redundancy.
Sharpen that message. Keep it lean and mean.
Exactly. Every point should serve a purpose. So yeah, when it comes to content structure, it's all about clarity, logic, and flow.
Taking your audience on a journey, one that's easy to follow and ultimately leads to your desired outcome.
Absolutely. All right, ready to talk visual.
Always. This is where we can really get creative and make data come alive.
They had some great ideas on this too. They loved charts and diagrams for showcasing key statistics.
It just makes data so much easier to digest, right?
Totally. And to make those charts pop, they suggested using high contrast colors.
So they're readable even from the back of the room.
Precisely. And while visuals are important, they cautioned against using too many.
You don't want to overload your audience, right?
Yeah.
Less is more.
Exactly. Make sure every visual serves a purpose, that it's there to reinforce your message, not distract from it. They also talked about using annotated graphs to highlight specific trends.
Oh, yeah. Those little labels and call-outs that draw your eye to what's important.
Right. And if you want to make your data even more dynamic, they considered using minimal animations.
But again, no crazy effects, right? Just subtle touches that enhance the data.
Exactly. No need to be flashy. And for demonstrating complex processes or product features, they were open to using short videos.
As long as they're super concise and relevant to the point you're trying to make.
Right. You don't want to lose momentum.
And to really simplify things, they were big on infographics. They allow you to present a lot of information in a visually appealing, and easy to understand way.
Love a good infographic. But no matter how great your visuals are, you can't just leave them to speak for themselves.
You got to explain them, right?
Absolutely. Guide your audience through those visuals, highlight the key takeaways,
Make sure everyone understands what they're looking at.
and don't overwhelm them with every single data point. Focus on the most impactful metrics.
The need-to-know stuff, the stuff that supports your main argument. What else?
They talked about using icons, to represent key terms or concepts.
Okay, little visual cues to make it easier to remember things.
Right. And to really boost engagement, they suggested interactive elements, maybe a quick quiz about the data before you reveal it, or a poll to get people thinking.
Love it. Keeps people on their toes.
And don't forget about the quality of your images. Make sure they're high resolution.
No blurry or pixelated images. That just screams unprofessional.
Exactly. If you're comparing different data sets, consistent color coding can be really helpful, especially on those multidimensional charts.
So yeah, visuals are about so much more than just making things look pretty.
They're a strategic tool that can enhance understanding, clarify complex information, and keep your audience engaged.
Okay, let's talk engagement. This is the big one, right? Keeping your audience captivated throughout the entire presentation. It's not always easy.
Not at all, but these guys had some brilliant strategies.
Like,
Well, they were all about that opening hook, grabbing your audience's attention from the very first moment.
a shocking statistic,
Mhm.
a thought-provoking question, a powerful anecdote, anything to get them invested right away.
Exactly. And to keep that energy going, they suggested sprinkling in interactive moments throughout the presentation.
Oh, those are great. Quick polls, questions, anything to make people feel like they're part of the conversation.
Right. And they talked about varying your pace, speeding up a bit here, slowing down there, just to keep things interesting.
It's like adding a little rhythm to your speech. They were also big on using rhetorical questions,
Ah, yes, those questions you don't necessarily expect an answer to.
but they make people think.
Exactly. Get those mental gears turning. And they are all about real-life examples and case studies.
Stories, anecdotes, they just make everything more relatable and memorable.
Absolutely. And remember, your voice is an instrument. They emphasized using vocal variety.
Not just speaking in a monotone, but changing your pitch, your volume, your tone to really emphasize key points.
Right. Inject some emotion, some energy into it. And what about props?
They were a bit cautious about those.
Yeah, they felt they should only be used sparingly and always with a clear purpose.
So no randomly pulling out a rubber chicken unless it's absolutely relevant to your point.
Exactly. And humor can be a great engagement tool, too, when used appropriately.
But keep it tasteful, keep it professional, and always read the room.
Right. Know your audience.
Another tip they had was to personalize your presentation.
Make it relevant to their lives, their experiences, their challenges. If they feel like you're speaking directly to them, they're going to be more engaged.
For sure. And they suggested dropping little teasers throughout the presentation, hints about upcoming information just to pique their curiosity.
Keeps them on the edge of their seats wanting to know what's coming next.
Love that. And they were also big on recaps, briefly summarizing key points to keep everyone on the same page.
Reinforcement is key, especially if you're dealing with complex information.
And don't underestimate the power of your physical presence. They stress the importance of maintaining confident posture, using purposeful movement on stage just to add dynamism and keep the audience's attention focused.
Right. You don't want to just stand there like a statue. Move around, use your space.
And those dramatic pauses, don't be afraid to use them.
Oh, yeah. Silence can be incredibly powerful. A well-placed pause can build anticipation, emphasize a key point.
It's all about control.
Absolutely. And finally, they said, be aware. Read the room.
Notice those nonverbal cues, the yawns, the glazed over looks.
Exactly. And if you sense people are getting bored, adjust. Change your pace. Throw in a quick question. Do something to re-engage them.
So keeping your audience engaged, it's a balancing act. You've got to be dynamic, you've got to make it relevant, and you've got to be constantly attuned to how they're responding.
Exactly. Think of it as a dance between you and your audience.
I love that. All right, let's talk practice. We all know it's crucial, but they took it to a whole new level.
Practice is the key to unlocking your full potential as a presenter.
And they recommended starting early, scheduling multiple practice sessions to really refine every aspect of your delivery.
The more you practice, the more confident you'll become.
And they were big on timing. Making sure each section of your presentation fits within your allotted time.
Right. You don't want to run out of time or have to rush through important points.
That's a disaster waiting to happen.
And to really get an objective view of how you come across, they suggested recording those practice sessions.
Oh, the dreaded video recording. But it's so helpful for seeing what you're doing well and what you need to work on.
Absolutely. Pay attention to your body language, your vocal inflections, everything. And get feedback from others, too.
Like a test audience.
Exactly. Have a few colleagues watch your practice run and give you honest feedback.
Fresh eyes can be invaluable.
Totally. And here's something I think a lot of people forget. Practice with your actual slides.
So you know how they flow with your speech.
Right. Make sure those transitions are smooth, that your visuals and your words are working together seamlessly. And to prepare for those unexpected moments, like sudden noises or interruptions, they suggested simulating distractions during practice.
Oh, that's a good one. I need to do that. I always get thrown off when something unexpected happens.
Practice handling those distractions. It'll help you stay calm and focused when the real thing happens. They were also adamant about vocal practice, varying your pitch, your volume, just to keep things interesting.
No monotone delivery.
Definitely not. And if you're planning to use humor, rehearse that too.
Make sure it lands, make sure it feels natural, make sure it's not going to bomb.
Right. And refine those notes. Make them concise, to the point. You don't want to be fumbling with a giant stack of papers while you're presenting.
Yeah, keep them as a reference, not a script.
Exactly.
And when it comes to technical terms, enunciate. Make sure everyone understands those complex concepts.
Clarity is key. And pay attention to how you're pacing yourself.
Don't rush through those crucial points.
No speed talking. And rehearse those potential Q&A answers.
So you're ready for anything.
Exactly. And for the ultimate test, do a full dress rehearsal with all your slides, your visuals, everything.
Like the real deal.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to make adjustments based on feedback or anything you notice during practice.
That's what practice is all about, right? Refining, honing, making it the best it can be.
Absolutely. All right, let's talk about objections, those challenging moments that can throw you off your game.
Oh, I dread those.
Well, they stress the importance of being prepared to handle them gracefully.
But how?
First and foremost, stay calm.
Easy to say, not so easy to do.
I know, but it's crucial. Take a deep breath, don't let your emotions get the better of you, and acknowledge the objection. Make the person feel heard.
So don't just dismiss them outright.
Exactly. It can help to de-escalate things and create a more open and respectful environment for discussion.
Okay, that makes sense. And when you do address the objection, back it up with evidence.
Facts, data, whatever you have to support your position, but again, keep it polite, no need to be confrontational.
No arguments.
Right. They also suggested trying to rephrase those objections as questions. It can help shift the dynamic from confrontation to collaboration.
Interesting. Turn that conflict into an opportunity for exploration. I like that.
Right. And even if you're feeling the heat, remember to maintain that confident body language.
Stay in control.
Exactly. Don't let those nonverbal cues betray you. And always look for common ground.
Find that shared understanding, that point of agreement that can bring everyone back together.
Exactly. And if things get really heated, they suggested using bridging techniques, gently redirecting the conversation back to the overall objective.
Steering things back on track.
Precisely.
And to really build confidence, make sure your slides have all those backup details, those data points, all that juicy evidence that you might.
It's a whole series of planning discussions between two people who are really dissecting the art of presenting. It's fascinating stuff. And our goal today is to kind of pull out the gems, the real nuggets of wisdom, so you can level up your own presentations, really connect with any audience, and just leave a lasting impact.
Going through this material, it struck me how deep they went, how much detail. It wasn't just about, oh, make your slides pretty or speak clearly, those things matter. But they looked at every element, from the minute you start talking to that final takeaway.
It's like they were building a blueprint for a killer presentation, huh?
Exactly. A great presentation is a well-constructed thing, not just a bunch of random tips.
So let's break it down. Right. We're going to dive into some key areas. We're talking things like crafting those killer openings that grab attention, designing slides that don't just exist but really support what you're saying. Then there's mastering, your voice, your body language so you own the room. And of course, how to handle those tough Q&A moments without, sweating bullets. But it goes even deeper, structuring your content so it flows, using visuals strategically, how to keep people engaged for the whole thing, practicing effectively so you're not just winging it, addressing objections smoothly, nailing that conclusion, taking feedback and actually using it, simplifying data that can make people's eyes glaze over, managing those nerves we all get, and even like the language you use to be truly persuasive. They really thought of everything.
And you see the common thread, right? All these elements feed into one big goal. To communicate your ideas clearly, but not just clearly, persuasively. So your audience gets it, but also feels it and is inspired to act on it.
Okay, so let's start at the very beginning. First impressions, those crucial opening moments, they really hammered this home. You got to capture your listeners right off the bat. And one idea that popped up using a striking statistic, something that wows them, or even a really relevant story, an anecdote that speaks to their world, their professional interests, not just any random attention grabber, but something that immediately makes them think, okay, this is for me.
It's like saying this is valuable to your work, to your challenges.
Yeah.
You'd establish that relevance right away.
And I loved this. They talked about starting with a question, a compelling question, something thought-provoking. It really energizes the audience from the get-go, makes them lean in. It's so simple, but think about your own presentations. How often do you do that? Actually start by asking them something.
Right. Instead of just launching into, here's what I'm going to tell you,
Yeah.
it flips the script.
It does. And it makes them active participants, right from the start. Instead of passive listeners, they're already thinking.
Makes a huge difference.
They also stress being super clear about your objective, like right up front. Let everyone know the main purpose, no mystery. Why are we all here? What are we trying to achieve? Makes sense, because if your audience is lost in the woods, not sure where you're going, good luck keeping them engaged.
Yeah, that clarity of purpose. It's like an anchor for the whole presentation. Everyone knows where they are, how the pieces fit together.
Okay, now this is where it gets really cool. They talked about weaving in a personal story, something brief but authentic, to build that human connection, rapport. Because let's face it, a dry concept, people forget that. But a personal story, that sticks.
Oh, absolutely. Storytelling is how we connect as humans. It makes you relatable, makes the message hit home.
And it doesn't have to be like this big dramatic thing, just something real, something that shows who you are, why this topic matters to you. And visuals, they were big on that. Not just any visuals, though. They talked about using like one powerful image, something simple but evocative. It sets the tone, sparks conversation, makes people feel something right away. They were really into the power of imagery.
And, it bypasses all that logical stuff, hits you right in the gut.
Yeah.
An emotional response. Much more powerful.
And then something that, we all know we should do, but rehearse that opening multiple times until it's smooth, natural, you're confident. But, and this is key, they also said be ready to adapt. What if the audience throws you a curveball? You got to be present in the moment.
It's a balance, right? You rehearse so you're not fumbling, but you also got to be able to read the room and adjust if you need to.
Yeah, it's like be prepared, but not robotic. And they were big on keeping that welcome concise, Get into the meat of things quickly. No one wants to sit through a long-winded intro. It's about respecting people's time.
Absolutely. Get to the point. It shows respect.
They also said, make sure you hit on the main benefit right in the intro. Like, here's why you should care, why this matters to you, because if they don't get that, why would they stick around?
Yeah, you're answering that unspoken question, what's in it for me?
And then, get this, they actually suggested a quick poll right at the beginning just to shake things up, get people involved, but short and sweet, not a huge time suck.
Love that. Even something small like that, it makes people lean in like they're part of the process.
Totally. And those first moments, they're just so critical to making your presentation stand out, It's like setting the stage.
Laying the foundation for everything that comes after.
Exactly. So let's talk slides. Designing slides that don't suck, that actually work. The first thing they tackled, this was interesting, they talked about redesigning slides to be like super clear. Key points only. Get rid of all that extra stuff that just confuses people. The thinking was, concise slides help keep everyone focused on you, what you're saying. The slides are supporting you, not stealing the show.
Right. They're a visual aid, not the main event.
And bullet points. You know how some slides are just like a wall of bullet points?
Oh, yeah, the dreaded bullet point overload.
Exactly. They were all about limiting those. Keep it clear, guide people, but don't overwhelm them.
I mean, who can absorb all that at once?
And then to really bring things to life, they talked about visuals, graphs, especially for complex data, makes it way easier to digest. But again, a word of caution, they said be careful not to let those visuals take over, overshadow your main points.
Yeah, visuals should enhance, not distract.
They went back and forth on this, a consistent color palette, or maybe switching it up a little to highlight different sections. They seem to think, consistency probably looks more professional.
It's polished, right? It shows you've put thought into it.
And for images, they like the idea of short captions underneath, just to make that connection crystal clear, so people don't miss the point.
It adds that extra bit of context, removes any doubt.
And that whole less is more thing, that kept coming up. Minimal text overall, fewer words on each slide. Because the idea is you're going to elaborate on those points, bring them to life.
Exactly. The slides are just the springboard.
They even nerded out on fonts, testing different ones for readability. Clean sans serif fonts seem to be the winner. Modern, easy on the eyes.
Yeah, font choice matters. It impacts how easily people can read your slides, especially from a distance. You don't want them squinting, trying to decipher what it says.
Slide transitions, they were all about those smooth, subtle ones. Nothing too flashy or gimmicky.
Yeah, you don't want the transitions to be the main attraction.
Exactly. Now, this sparked a debate. Short video clips. Could be great, right?
Yeah.
But also potentially disruptive. They landed on, if you do it, keep it super short, laser focused, and make sure it adds real value, not just fluff.
It's got to enhance the point you're making, not derail the presentation.
Then they played around with contrasting color backgrounds to emphasize different sections, but again, they were cautious. Keep it tasteful, not an assault on the eyes.
Subtlety is key.
Big picture. Each slide should flow logically from the one before, Like a good story, you're building a narrative.
It guides your audience along, makes it easy to follow your thought process.
And of course, practice, practice, practice. With your actual slides, get the timing down, smooth out those transitions. It makes a huge difference.
Absolutely. You got to see how all the pieces fit together in real time.
Okay, now let's talk about you, the presenter. Mastering your voice and body language. They were big on projection, Projecting your voice so you command attention, but not in a shouty, aggressive way. It's about being clear, being heard, but also being approachable.
It's that balance between authority and warmth.
And pacing, like controlling your speed, not too fast that people can't keep up, not so slow that they fall asleep. It's got to be just right.
It's about respecting your audience's ability to process what you're saying.
This one, we all struggle with this, those filler words. Actually, they suggested replacing them with pauses. Mindful pauses.
Yeah, it makes you sound more thoughtful, more in control.
And I think it gives people a moment to digest, too,
Definitely.
Varying your tone is another key one. To emphasize certain points, keep it interesting. If you're monotone the whole time, people tune out.
It's like listening to a song with no melody, just one note.
Exactly. And facial expressions. Smile, show enthusiasm, be human. It makes you relatable. It makes people want to listen.
Let your face reflect your passion for the topic.
Hand gestures, they're good, right?
Yeah.
To emphasize points. But not too much. You don't want to be a windrow.
Yeah, you want to use them deliberately, not just be flailing around.
And this was smart. They actually recommended recording yourself practicing so you can see your posture, your eye contact, all that. It can be eye-opening for sure.
Oh, it can be brutal, but so helpful. It shows you what you're really projecting.
Speaking with passion, this came up a lot. If you don't believe what you're saying, why should they? Authenticity is contagious.
It's that energy that draws people in.
And then, of course, nerves. Deep breathing exercises, classic, but they work. Just to calm yourself down before you start.
Yeah, center yourself.
They also suggested practicing those transitions between sections so they feel smooth, not clunky.
It helps your audience follow along, understand the flow of your ideas.
And after a complex point, just pause. Give people a moment to process,
Respect the information. Let it sink in.
A little humor can be great, but they cautioned, make sure it fits the tone, make sure it's not offensive.
Yeah, you don't want to alienate anyone.
Warm up your voice, too. Do some articulation exercises so you're nice and clear, especially if you're using any, technical terms.
Yeah.
And then practice, practice, practice.
Until it's second nature.
Okay, Q&A time. This is where it can get real, right? They were all about prepping for those tough questions, actually thinking about what people might ask and having some answers ready saves you from that deer in the headlights moment.
Preparation is key. It builds your confidence.
And what if you get a question that's confrontational? They said, take a breath, stay calm, Address the issue head on, but don't get defensive.
It shows you're in control.
Have some evidence ready, too. Data, backup slides, if you need to go deeper.
Shows you've done your homework.
And this was a good one. If there's a valid criticism, acknowledge it. Be transparent. It actually builds trust.
It shows you're human. You're not afraid to admit when someone has a point.
And if a question is, super vague, rephrase it. Clarify what they're really asking.
Make sure you're on the same page.
Body language matters, even during Q&A. Keep eye contact, stand tall, project confidence.
It's all part of the message.
What if a question goes totally off topic? Gently steer it back to the main point, but be polite,
Right. Keep it relevant without being dismissive.
If someone has a totally different viewpoint, they said try to find common ground. Start from a place of agreement.
It can de-escalate things, make it more of a conversation.
Always thank the person who asked the question, even if it was a real zinger.
It shows respect.
And guess what? Practice Q&A too. With colleagues, friends, whoever, get used to thinking on your feet.
It's a skill, just like any other part of presenting.
They even talked about bridging techniques, to subtly guide those questions back to your main point.
It keeps you in control, but in a way that feels natural.
Have some notes handy, too, in case you need to jog your memory on a key fact or figure.
It's like a safety net.
And be patient. Listen to each question carefully so people feel heard. Don't rush them.
It shows respect.
So much goes into a good Q&A, doesn't it?
It's a whole other art form.
Okay, let's talk structure, how to organize your content so it makes sense, it flows. They emphasized logical order, like a clear path through your arguments.
It's a roadmap, right, so people don't get lost.
Exactly. And grouping related points together under themes, that was another one, helps people see the connections.
It makes it easier to remember.
They liked starting with a high-level overview, before diving deep, like setting the stage.
It's like giving people the big picture, the lay of the land, before you zoom in.
Then present your most important arguments first. The really strong stuff, capture attention.
Front load it while people are still fresh.
And don't go too crazy with those subpoints. You don't want to overwhelm people. Pick the most relevant ones.
Yeah, less is more, sometimes.
To make sure everyone's with you, they considered adding a quick recap after each section. Just a little reminder.
It reinforces those key takeaways.
Those transitions between sections, they were really big on that. Make them smooth, use clear transition statements.
It's about guiding people along the journey.
And this was cool. After you make a major point, use a real-life example. A story, a case study, something concrete.
Makes it more relatable.
Each slide, one key takeaway. That was another rule.
Keep it focused.
And then that ending, building towards a strong conclusion that brings everything together.
It's like landing the plane smoothly.
To help people along, they suggested verbal cues, like actually saying, key point 1 is this, or moving on to key point 2.
Those little signposts can make a difference.
And using transitional phrases like building on that idea, moving forward, let's consider.
Keeps it conversational.
Last step before you actually present. Go back and look for redundancy. Cut out anything that's not absolutely essential.
Make it tight, make every point count.
That whole structure thing, it's about taking people on a clear, logical journey, isn't it?
Exactly. It's about flow.
All right, let's talk visuals. Not just any visuals, though, using them strategically to make your presentation better. They were all about charts and diagrams, especially for stats. Makes that data less intimidating.
Yeah, brings it to life.
High contrast colors for charts, they said, so everyone can see them, even in the back row.
Accessibility matters.
But don't go overboard. Don't cram in a million visuals just for the sake of it. Make sure each one has a purpose.
It should contribute to your message, not be a distraction.
Annotated graphs, that was a good one. To highlight those key trends, make it super clear what people should be looking at.
It's like saying, hey, pay attention to this part.
Minimal animations, if you use them, just to reveal data step by step. Nothing too flashy.
Yeah, you want to guide people's eyes, not give them a seizure.
For some things, a demo video might be better than slides, they said. But again, short, to the point.
Right, you don't want people checking the watches.
Infographics, those can be awesome for complex stuff. Combines visuals and text. But whatever visuals you use, they stressed explaining them. Don't just throw them up there and assume people get it. Walk them through it.
You've got to provide the context, the why.
Highlight the most important metrics, they said. Don't drown people in numbers.
Focus on what really matters.
Icons, they liked those. visual representations of key ideas helps people remember.
So like little memory treasures.
They even talked about like interactive stuff, maybe let people guess a trend before you reveal the chart, that kind of thing. Keeps them on their toes.
Engaging.
And make sure those images are high res, professional.
Details matter.
If you're comparing data, color code those categories. Makes it much easier to follow.
Yeah, it creates visual order.
It's all about making those visuals work for you, not against you.
They should complement your message, make it stronger.
Okay, how to keep people engaged from start to finish. That can be tough. They were big on that strong opening, grab them right away. An intriguing fact, a bold statement, something that makes them go, whoa.
First impressions are everything.
Keep them on their toes with little interactive moments throughout, too. Quick polls, questions, just to shake things up.
It breaks the monotony, gets people involved.
And vary your pace.
Right.
Sometimes speed up a little to add energy, other times slow down to emphasize something important.
Yeah, like a good song, you've got to have dynamics.
Rhetorical questions, they're good too. Get people thinking.
Engages their brains.
And real-life stories. Always a winner.
Yeah, makes it relatable, makes it stick.
A stressed vocal variety. Don't be afraid to, change your pitch, your volume.
Makes you more interesting to listen to.
Props, if you use them sparingly. Make sure they have a purpose,
Right.
not just random stuff.
They should enhance, not distract.
Little humor, if it fits. But, be careful with that.
Definitely read the room.
Then make it personal. Connect to your audience's world, their experiences.
People pay attention when they feel like it's about them.
Give them a little teaser, too, about something cool that's coming up later. Build anticipation.
Keeps them hooked.
Little recaps can be good, too, just to remind people where you've been, how it all connects.
It brings everyone back together, make sure no one's lost.
And you, the presenter, they were big on confident posture, moving around the stage purposefully.
Owning the space.
Dramatic pauses, they're good too, just before you reveal something important.
Adds impact.
And most importantly, watch your audience. Are they engaged? Bored? Adjust if you need to.
Read the room.
So many moving parts to keeping people engaged.
It's about creating an experience.
Speaking of experience, let's talk practice. These guys, they were big on practice. Multiple sessions, really getting comfortable with your material.
Practice makes perfect, or as close as you can get.
Time yourself, too. Make sure you're not going to run out of time or drag on forever.
Respect the clock.
Record yourself so you can see what you look and sound like.
It can be painful,
Okay.
but it's the best way to identify those little things you need to work on.
Have some friends, colleagues watch you, give you feedback.
Fresh eyes are so valuable.
Practice with your actual slides. Get that flow down.
Yeah, make sure the visuals and the spoken word are in sync.
And this was funny. They even said to practice with distractions, like have your phone ring. See if you can stay focused.
Preparation for the real world.
Practice varying your pitch, your volume, so you don't sound like a robot.
Keep it dynamic.
If you're going to use humor, practice that too. Make sure it lands.
You don't want crickets.
Streamline your notes. Get rid of anything that's going to trip you up.
Keep it simple.
Work on your enunciation, especially if you're using technical jargon. Be crystal clear.
Make sure every word is understood.
Pace yourself so you don't rush through the important stuff.
Give those key points the space they need to breathe.
And this was interesting. Practice your Q&A answers too.
Yeah, anticipate those questions. Have some responses ready to go.
Do a full dress rehearsal, like the whole thing.
Run it like it's showtime.
And be open to feedback. Tweak things based on what you learn.
It's a process of continuous improvement.
So much goes into a great presentation. It's amazing.
It's definitely a craft.
Okay, objections. What if someone disagrees with you or challenges your ideas? They were big on staying calm, having a plan for how to handle that.
Yeah, it's easy to get flustered, but you got to keep your cool.
Acknowledge their viewpoint, first of all. Makes them feel heard.
Shows respect.
And have some counter-arguments ready, based on facts.
Be prepared to back up what you're saying.
They suggested trying to rephrase the objection as a question turns it into more of a conversation.
Diffuses the tension.
And watch your body language even when you're getting grilled.
Stay calm, collected, confident.
Try to find common ground, emphasize those shared goals.
Focus on what you agree on.
Always thank them for the question, even if it's tough.
Again, it's about respect.
Have some backup data ready, just in case you need to go deeper.
It shows you've done your due diligence.
Be concise in your responses, don't ramble.
Respect people's time.
If the objection's taking you off track, gently steer it back to the main point.
Stay in control.
And practice, even those tough scenarios.
Yeah, mental rehearsal can be just as important as the actual practice.
Handling objections, it's like a skill in itself, isn't it?
It is. It's about communication. It's about diplomacy.
Almost there. Let's talk about that conclusion. How to really nail the ending. They were all about recapping those benefits, making sure people understand how to apply what they've learned.
You want people to walk away with something they can actually use.
A strong call to action, too. Tell people exactly what you want them to do next.
Give them direction.
Ending with a powerful quote, that was another idea. Something that encapsulates your theme.
It could be very memorable.
Thank your audience, of course. Show your appreciation.
Just good manners.
Mention the Q&A. Invite some last questions.
Keeps the conversation going.
And this was cool. They tried to tie their conclusion back to their opening, to create that sense of completion.
It's satisfying, right? Like a story that comes full circle.
They liked having a summary slide, too, just to visually reinforce those takeaways.
Gives people something to remember.
And when you deliver that conclusion, they said, do it with a good pace, give each point the emphasis it deserves.
Yeah, you don't want to rush through it.
And keep that enthusiasm up right to the very end.
Let them know you still care.
A concluding visual, that can be powerful too. Maybe a simple infographic that captures the essence of your message.
A final image that stays with people.
And maybe a little inspirational story at the end, to leave people feeling motivated.
Send them off on a high note.
But don't introduce any new stuff in your conclusion. That was a big no-no. Just focus on reinforcing what you've already said.
Yeah, you don't want to confuse people at this point.
A strong conclusion, it's about driving your message home, isn't it?
Absolutely. Leaving a lasting impression.
All right, last but not least, incorporating feedback. They were big on listening to those early reviews, seeing what people understood, what they didn't, and then actually making changes based on that.
Feedback is a gift. Use it.
If a section felt kind of dry, they'd add in a story, something to make it more engaging.
Yeah, stories are always good.
They'd rework those transitions, make them smoother.
It's all about creating a seamless experience.
They even toned down their slides if the colors were too bright or distracting.
You want it to be visually appealing, but not overwhelming.
And they'd experiment with different pacing, to see what worked best for most people.
Yeah, because everyone has a different preference.
If people said they wanted more interaction, they'd add in some polls, that kind of thing.
It's about being responsive to your audience's needs.
And they'd actually acknowledge the feedback during their presentation to show they'd listened and made changes.
It builds trust.
They even considered giving out like a summary handout at the end, something people could take away.
Nice little takeaway.
They updated their examples too to make sure they were current.
Gotta stay relevant.
And they were super careful about data accuracy, double-checking everything.
Yeah, that's crucial. You lose credibility if your data is wrong.
And they even went back and revised their introduction based on feedback about how to make it more engaging.
It's that first impression again, so important.
So it's about really taking that feedback to heart, making your presentation better.
It's all about continuous improvement.
Last one, simplifying data. Because data can be scary, right? They were all about breaking it down into smaller chunks.
Yeah, no one wants to be hit with a fire hose of information.
Plain language, they said. Avoid jargon unless you absolutely have to use it.
Think it's accessible.
Color-coded graphs to make it easy to see those different data sets.
Visuals make a huge difference.
And always explain those visuals. Don't just assume people get it.
Give them the context.
Make it real, too. Explain why this data matters, how it impacts them.
Yeah, give them the so what.
They even talked about using stories to make data more relatable.
That's interesting.
And focus on those key takeaways. Don't get lost in the weeds.
Highlight what's most important.
Maybe have a quick Q&A after a complex data section just to clarify anything.
Yeah, address those questions right away.
Double-check your sources, make sure everything's accurate and up to date.
Credibility is key.
Slides with minimal text, they said. Let the visuals do the talking.
A picture is worth 1,000 words.
Comparative charts, those are good for showing change over time.
Helps people see the trends.
Be ready to explain your methodology, too, if anyone asks.
Transparency is good.
And after each data section, give a quick summary of those key findings.
Reinforce, reinforce, reinforce.
So data doesn't have to be boring or confusing, right?
You just have to present it the right way.
Well, we've covered a lot today, haven't we? It's amazing how much goes into crafting a truly effective presentation.
It's a real art form.
And what I love about these discussions is they didn't just skim the surface, They went deep, really thought about every aspect.
They were meticulous.